collapse of life as we know it, as perpetrated by the global military-industrial complex. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the host of the Ronald Show, Ronald.
What if a government intelligence analyst from the Pentagon is forced to save mankind from extinction and the world from destruction, but first he must evolve into the Messiah and create the plan to save the world? The 21st century Messiah arrives, battles dark forces, and sparks the Armageddon that leads to the apocalypse, rapture, the 2012 pole shift, and extraterrestrial contact. Buy the book today by Ronald Farnham at Amazon and Barnes & Noble, The Second Coming of the Messiah, Book 1, The Awakening.
Hi, my name is Joseph Cooper. I want to thank you all for watching this documentary. What this documentary is about an ancient code. Code that goes back thousands of years, and I want to give you some background information about what the code is about and why we have the code. And I also want to bring you up to date and show you that this code exists all around you. As a matter of fact, it's very hard to get away from it. And I want to show you who's behind the code and why they use it, and give you some examples of how they are doing it, and then you can find your own examples when you're out there. So before we get going, I need to explain how the code actually works. Most people are familiar with Bible codes, for instance, like they've heard of the number 666, and that is actually a science called gematria. In the ancient world, they actually used letters for numbers. They didn't have numbers. That came about in the 8th century with India, is where we started getting numbers, but usually prior to that they used letters. So about the 12th century we started actually using Arabic numerals, but prior to that we used letters. So letters also are a stand-in in place of numbers, and if you look in the Bible in Revelation chapter 13 verse 18, it talks about, here is wisdom, let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. Now, what you haven't been taught in school is the fact that numbers also have a dual meaning. They have what's called a quantitative meaning. That's what you're taught in school. You're taught how to count, how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide. But what you probably didn't know, that numbers also have what's called a qualitative meaning. Now, qualitative meaning means they have a meaning that goes beyond what you were taught. For instance, the number 1 in the Bible stands for the one true God. The number 2 has at least 2 meanings. It stands for establishment or division. The number 3 stands for completion. The number 4 stands for the world. The number 5 stands for grace. And the number 6, which is what we're going to be talking about, is the number of man. Now, why is number 6 the number of man? If you look back in the Bible and back in Genesis, you'll find out that man was made on the 6th day. Now, the 6th day is the only day that God said was very good. All the rest of them, he just said was good. So we know from the Bible that man sinned against God. So the number 6 actually took on a new meaning of very evil. Now, the number 6, even its shape has meaning. All the numbers actually have meaning. For instance, the number 1 is actually, biblically, it relates to a phallus symbol. In the ancient world, they did not believe that the number 1 was actually a number. They believed it was God, the creator, and the number 1 represented a phallus symbol because it generated all the rest of the numbers. Now, the number 2 in Arabic now represents a man that's worshiping God. He's on his knees and he's bowing to the number 1. So the shapes of our numbers also have significance. We're also going to talk about shapes, familiar shapes known as polygons, and what the significance of polygons are. and we're going to first start with the English alphabet. Now, most people are not familiar that the English alphabet is actually a mathematical code. When you talk about the English alphabet, we are talking about 26 letters of the alphabet. Now, in the societies, they number the alphabet. Like, for instance, A would equal 1, and Z would equal 26. So B would equal 2, so on and so forth. When the secret societies use the code, they use the alphabet many times. Now, in the advanced occult, they actually divide the alphabet in half. And half of 26 would be 13. So 13 is known as the witch's number. For instance, a coven consists of 13 members. Now, why is that important? What's the significance of 13? Well, this is where we have to talk about prime numbers. A prime number is any number that can be divided by 1 in itself only. So they also have a sequence. The prime numbers have sequence. So the first prime number is 2. The only numbers that go into it that are factors are 1 and 2 itself. So the number 2, which is the only even prime number, also is the first in sequence. So the number 2 actually represents also a number 1. Now, prime numbers are the mathematical building blocks of the universe. So the next prime number in sequence would be 3. Only 1 and 3 go into that. Now, 4 would not be a prime number, and the reason for that is because more than 1 and 4 go into it. Also, the number 2 goes into it, and we call that a composite number. Okay? What we're interested in is the prime numbers. So the next number in sequence is 5. 5 is the third prime number. And then 6. 6 is not a prime number, but because it has 1 goes into it, 2 goes into it, 3 goes into it, and 6 goes into it. The next prime number, the fourth prime number, is 7. 7 is the fourth prime number. The next one is 11, and that is the fifth prime number. And then we get to the sixth prime number, which just happens to be 13. So 13 in the occult is actually a secret 6. For instance, we talk about Friday the 13th. In the Bible, Saturday is the Sabbath day or the seventh day. So the sixth day would automatically be Friday. So Friday is another way of saying 6. What we're going to talk about in this documentary is a code, an ancient code. It goes all the way back to Babylon. But nevertheless, even though it goes back to Babylon, the code exists today, and it's in architecture. It's in many things that we look at every day, but we don't realize it. What I want to do is I'm going to explain the background of the code. I'm going to give you information about it, but I want you to do your own homework. I want you to check it out for yourself. I want you to do your own research. And I want you, especially, what I want you to do is I want you to count. Because if you count, then you'll see that what I'm telling you about is actually true, and it actually it exists in your world, not just in the ancient world. The subject we're going to talk about is called gematria. Now, gematria is an ancient science, and it's based on the fact that letters can also represent numbers. Now, a long time ago, they didn't use numbers. They used letters as representative of numbers. And what people don't realize is today, even the English language is set up as a mathematical code. For instance, we have 26 letters in the English alphabet. The way that the code works is very simple. It's if you're in kindergarten, you can probably figure it out. A represents 1, and we have 26 letters, so Z represents 26. And actually, they use this code all the time also. But we're going to talk about a little bit variation of that code. When you divide the alphabet in half, half of 26 is 13. And we are actually going to talk about what the number 13 means, what its significance is, and why it's important in the understanding of the code. Now, for most people, they think of the number 13 as being an unlucky number. Okay? We talk about Friday the 13th, for instance. Now, where does it get that connotation? It goes back thousands of years. First of all, we have to go back to the Bible, to Genesis. In Genesis, it says God did different things on each day, but on the sixth day, He made man. If you look at your Bible, in Genesis, it talks about God said on each day it was good. But when He got to the sixth day, when he made man, when he made Adam, he said, and Eve, he said it was very good. So it's the only day that he said it was very good. But we know from just a cursory reading of the Bible that man fell. Adam and Eve fell. So that number 6 went from being very good to becoming very evil. Now the context will determine whether it's very good or it's very evil. So the thing that I want to show you is how the secret societies mark their signature. They like the number 6, so they make sure they put the number 6 into everything, okay? But they hide it many times so that you won't recognize it. Because you could see the number 666, for instance, which is in Revelation 13:18, where it says, here is wisdom, that him that hath understanding, count the number of the beast, for it's the number of a man, and his number is 666. You would say, oh my goodness, I don't want to be a part of that. So what they do is they hide it. For instance, the occult, which is the ones that use this code, they actually stole it. And originally the number 666 had a good meaning. Today it has an evil connotation. But the number 6, because man was made on the 6th day, is representative of man. Man is marked by the number 6. For instance, there's 24 hours in a day. So there's 4 6s in 24 hours, okay? In a clock, for instance, we have 60 minutes, so there's 10 6s in that. And then there's 60 seconds, so we use what's called the Babylonian system, which is called sexagesimal, or the base 60 system, okay? Now, the Babylonians were very famous in numbers and in the reading of the stars, the understanding of the stars. The Babylonians are the ones where we get this code from. Originally, it went back to a guy named Nimrod. You can read about in the Bible in the early chapters of Genesis. Now, Nimrod was a prototype on the Antichrist. He was the 6th generation from Noah. Now, Noah, if you remember the biblical story, they went through a flood. All the people on the planet were wiped out except for 8 people. Noah, his wife, his 3 sons, Ham, Shem, and Japheth, and their 3 wives. Well, Ham did a dastardly deed, and the Bible says that he was cursed. Well, Nimrod comes from the Ham line. The Ham line is the one that set up this system of a coded system of the number 6. Now, how does that work today? We have the English alphabet. The English alphabet has 26 letters. And they actually number the alphabet as A equals 1 and Z equals 26. And that is more amateurish, though. In the advanced occult, they divide the alphabet in half. Half of 26 is 13. So, for instance, they will go A through M is 1 through 13. So A is 1, M is a 13. So when you see M, you have to think 13. So, and then they'll go N, which is the next letter. N represents a 1, and then a Z represents a 13. Now that's the basics of the code. So A would be 1, B would be 2, C would be 3, N would be 1, O would be 2, P would be 3. So that's the basic understanding. Now there is some other things you need to know, but that is the basics. For instance, vowels, and we have, how many vowels do we have? We have 5 vowels, but sometimes they say it's sometimes Y. So there's actually 6 of them, 6 different vowels that you can use. The reason why they use the number 6, because the number 6 stands for man. As a matter of fact, if you look at the number 6, it's actually the shape of a phallus, okay? And it represents man himself. That's where it comes from. In the alphabet with the vowels, the letters like A, E, I, O, and U. A represents 1, E represents 5, I represents 9, O represents 2, and U represents 8. But all the vowels also have another meaning. They could also represent 1. They have that dual meaning. Also, with the alphabet, the shapes of the letters are important. For instance, the M represents a 13. Now let's take the letter W. The letter W is actually would be the number 10 in the code, but because of its shape, it can, whether it's sideways, upside down, whatever, it can still also represent a 13. Now, why is 13 important? Because 13 is what's called a prime number, and the prime numbers are the mathematical building blocks of the universe. If you know about prime numbers, any number divisible by 1 in itself only, then you know that 13 would be the 6th prime number. For instance, 2 is the first prime number, 3, then 5, then 7, 11, and 13 is the 6th prime number. In the occult, they hide the 6s many times. So 13 would be a secret 6. If I said Friday the 13th to you, Friday in the Bible is the day before Saturday. Saturday is the 7th day, or the Sabbath day, so Friday would be the 6th day. So Friday the 13th is code for 666. Now, 6 is the number of man, or man against God. 666 biblically is the number of Antichrist, and 666 is the number of Satan. And when I use the term Satan, the way the Bible uses it, it means the one who pulls the strings behind the scenes. It's a title. It's different than the term devil, even though they're the same entity, because the devil means one who is up front, who's in your faith. But Satan is the one who pulls the strings behind the scene. You don't really see how it's happening. So 666 means Satan. Okay. Now, you find the number 666 in the Bible in the last book of the Bible, which is Revelation. Some people call it the Apocalypse. And in the chapter 13, and in verse 18, it talks about, the verse says, here is wisdom. Now, wisdom means applied knowledge. You have to apply knowledge in order to get an understanding. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast. And the beast represents government. It represents Satan. It represents the serpent. Beast can have multiple meanings. And it's also, the serpent, by the way, was also a phallic symbol in the ancient world. So it says, here is wisdom, let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast. And that's what you have to do. You have to count, for it's the number of a man. Well, what man? That's the important. The man would be the Antichrist, okay? So, and the man, it's the number of a man, and his number basically is 666, is because that man is ruled by Satan, and he will have super knowledge. And by the way, there's a whole world system that's set up today that's been going on for thousands of years that shows that they already have a huge amount of control over the world. And we're going to talk about the code, or the stamp, or the mark. I will mention that in the Greek, the 6th letter of the alphabet is called stigma. Now, stigma means a mark, an offensive mark, okay, as it represents evil, okay, the number 6. And it's also pronounced wow, W-A-U, W-A-U. Now, remember what I said. A W is an upside down M, and an M represents 13. But the AU is, A represents 1, and the U is an 8.
Have you ever wanted to write a book? Have you ever wanted to write a screenplay? Have you ever wanted to have your great movie idea turned into a screenplay, turned into a movie, turned into a book, and distributed all over the world? Well, now you can learn how to do it with the great new book by Ronald Farnham, How to Write a Screenplay in 30 Days or Less. It includes the logline, theme, synopsis, outline, and screenplay of the 3 magic questions. Learn how to write a screenplay in 30 days or less, or your money back. Get it today at Amazon or Barnes & Noble.
When you do the code, code, you have to add and multiply. For instance, the number, or the letter K or X is 11. Okay. Now 11 can also be 1 plus 1 is 2, or it could be 1 times 1 is 1. So you got to keep that in mind whenever you're doing the code, that it stands for that. And I'll give you some examples of that. And we're gonna go to some examples that are right around our area here. For instance, we're going to talk about the Toyota sign. We're going to talk about the Nokia sign. We're going to talk about the Staples Center, which is where we are at right now, and many other different logos. The Toyota sign, you notice that it has 3 circles. Now the circle circles where the shape had to do with the shapes, and now you know that the circle also represents a 6. So we talked about some other things, like it's in the Bank of America logo. It has 3 11s in it. The 11s stand for 33, but it could also be 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1, which is 6. That's their mark. You'll see it everywhere. Once you learn to count. See, the problem is we are so desensitized that we just take everything for granted. We don't count. We don't even count our money. That's how desensitized we are to it. But the fact is, when you learn how to count, and this is really the baby or rudimentary stuff that we're talking about, but when you learn how to count, then you can begin to see who is in control. Now, there is they may be in control right now, but if you read the Bible, we know in the end who ultimately wins. But we need to know what's going on so we don't make improper decisions and buy into the worldly things. And set our affections on things above instead of things on the earth. Walk your neighborhood, you'll begin to see this, and go to the business center, and you will begin to see that this stuff is everywhere. Even when you're watching TV, you begin to notice how they do it. Do some research on your own. Begin to count. Go to the business sections of your neighborhood and begin to look at some of the signs for yourself. Maybe take some pictures. You might not be able to figure them all out, but I guarantee you, the Fortune 500 companies, every one of them have the code inside it. And remember what their mark is now. It's a 6 or some variation of the number 6. Now, also, you want to, maybe when you're watching TV, another thing that I did not mention, but it's important to know, is a 6 could also be a 9. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter about whether it looks like a 6. If it's upside down, if it's sideways, it doesn't matter. It's still a 6. For instance, if it said something is 99.9% pure, that's still a 666. So keep that in mind. And also, we talked about the shapes, so you understand now more about the shapes and how they can also represent 6s. Okay, right now what I want to do is point out some examples. We're going to take something called, for instance, the Staples Center, which is right behind us. Now, we talked about the code. Now, remember the number 13 also represents a 6, and I also want you to remember that vowels, even though they have their own numerical value, they can also represent 1. Okay, so let's take staple, for instance. Let's break it apart. S on the code would be NOPQRS. So S is a 6. Now, what is T? Well, NOPQRST. So you have a 7. 6 plus 7 is 13. Okay, now 13 is basically a secret 6. The next one is A, which is a 1, and P, which is a 3. So NOP, 3. So that's a 1-3 or another 13, which is a secret 6. Then we have LES. Okay. Now the L is a 12, and when you do the count on the alphabet, and the S is a 6. 12 plus 6 is 18. Now, what are we going to do with the letter E? In this case, and it depends on the context now, the letter E represents a 1. So let's go back. We had ST, which is 13, or another 6. AP, which is 13, which also represents 6. And then you have a 1. So 6 plus 6 plus 1 is 13. And then the LS is 12 plus 6, or 18. It's a 13, 18 is what it is. That's Staples. Now let's look at the word center. Center, the first letter is C. C is the number 3, ABC. E is the number 5. And N is NOP, so N would be 1. So 5 plus 1 is 6. So C is a 3. And then 3 6s is another way of saying 666 or 18, okay? Then we have TER. Now, what's interesting about T is that the T is the 7th letter. But remember, 7 is also a prime number. Now let's look at E. E is the 5th letter. Remember, 5 is also a prime number. And R is also a 5, NOPQR. So that also represents a 5. Now with prime numbers, you can also go by what's called the prime number sequence. So a 5 has a sequence of 3, so it also represents 3. And a T, in this case, we can leave it, it's a 7. Okay, so we have E, which is a 5, which also represents 3, and an R, which is 5, which represents 3. So we have 7 plus 3 plus 3, or 13. So now we have the center, which is CEN, that represented 18, and then the TER, that represents 13. It's another 1318 right in front of our eyes. So here we have the box office, the Staples box office, and where they sell the tickets at, and it says AXS. So in the code, A represents 1, X is the number 11, NOPQRSTUVWX. So 11 plus 1 is going to give you 12, and then we have an S, and the S in the code represents a 6. So we have NOPQRS, 6. Okay, so 12 plus 6 is 18, and 18 is another way of saying 666 or 3 6s. Now look at the word COM there, C-O-M. Okay, the C represents 3. Now, one thing we did mention about the circle, even though the O represents a 2, or it can have a sequence of 1, because it's a prime number, it can also represent a 6. When you look at a circle, you notice that in geometry, a circle has a center point, and then it has a circumference. If you were to go from the center point to the circumference, we call that the radius. Now, the radius, if you were to take the radius, whatever the radius is for that circle, and walk it around the outside of the circumference of the circle, it would actually be exactly 6 times that it would go around. And we could go from point to point. We could actually draw a hexagon. Hex means, in Greek, hex means 6. Okay, so our circle also represents what is called a secret 6. So, for instance, the letter O can represent a 2 because of NO in the code, but also because 2 is the prime number, can represent 1. So it can represent a 1, a 2, and also the shape is a 0, so it could represent a 0, and it could also represent a 6. So keep that in mind. 0 or O is really the wild card in this whole thing. It has multiple meanings, more than any of the other letters. Okay, so it has C. C is 3. O is, in this case, it represents a 6, or 3 6 is 18, and then the M is a 13. So we have another 1318 is what it is. Notice that the Toyota sign has how many circles? If you count them, there are 1, 2, 3. Now, if the circle represents 6, what does that represent? That represents 666. That's what that is. So now you know. Now, any of the Fortune 500 companies, they all have the code in them. So if it's a Fortune 500 company, in order for them to be in that club, they have to have it in their logo. They have to have some signature that shows who's in control. So now you know. It doesn't matter whether or not they're Japanese or not. They all play this same game.
What about the letters Toyota?
Okay, let's take a look. Let's take a look at Toyota. The first 2 letters in Toyota are T and O. Okay, T is a 7, and an O is a. In this case, it is a 6. Now, 7 and 6 is 13. Now, let's leave that there. Once you have your 13, let's leave it at that. What do we have left? We have Y and O. Y is a 12 in the code, and an O is also a number 6. Okay, so 12 and 6 is 18. Now, it's interesting because we have a T and an A left. T is a 7, but a 7 is also the 4th prime number. So the 7 in this case represents 4, and then the A is a 1. 4 plus 1 is 5. So we already had 13. 13 plus 5 is 18, and then the Y and the O, that also represents an 18. And an 18 and 18 are 36, and a 36 is the same thing as saying 3 6s.
first commandment is to maintain a global population under 500 million. Do you know what that means? It means 6.5 billion people are going to die at the hands of the Illuminati unless we stop the Iranians from detonating that dirty nuclear bomb at the Hollywood and Vine train station.
The Iranian suicide bomber cell is located at the Vibe Hotel on Hollywood Boulevard.
This isn't Scooby-Doo.
Please!
Little blood drink and turned your stomach?
Guide them to the bomb. What is this? Fucking Batman and Robin?
I had become part of something that I no longer felt right about serving.
It's Hollywood and Vine, not Vine Hollywood. Don't you know anything about American culture, you silly Russian?
The global military-industrial complex.
Leading the charge of the carnal feminine.
Ah, yes. The Messiah.
My book. It's the solution.
How is that the way the world is?
Traitor. Who are you working for?
If I was cartoon character, I'd be Woody Woodpecker.
This land is your land. This land is my land. From the Gulf Stream waters to the New York Island, this land was made for you and me.
An important thing to understand about the code is whatever you can do to one side of the code, like for instance A through M, you can also do to the other side of the code, which would be N through Z. So for instance, if I mentioned before about the letter W, it's an upside down M. So even though W is the 10th letter, because it's an upside down M, it can also represent 13. On the other hand, if you go A through M, you find out that the letter J, which is also the 10th letter like W, that J can also represent a 13 because whatever you can do to one side, you can do to the other. So in this case, now we're going to look at J.W. Marriott, okay? So right behind us, we have a shot. The J in this case represents a 13. The W is an upside down M, so it also represents the 13. And then the Marriott, the first letter is an M, and that represents the 13. All 13s are 6s, all 6s are 13. So that would be a 6, 6, 6. The W is the number 10 in the code. So the W can also represent an M or a 13, but it also, remember I said you could cross add or cross multiply. So a 10 could also be 1 plus 0, or it could be 1 times 0. So in this case, what we're going to look at, where the W represents a 1. 1 plus 0 is 1. So let's look at Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo in our background here, the W in this case represents a 1. The E represents a 5. 1 plus 5 is 6. And then we have two L's. This is where you're going to have to step it up a little bit. The L's are 12. But a 12 is 1 plus 2, which is 3. And then we have two L's. That's another 1 plus 2, which is 3. So now we have another 6. 3 plus 3 is 6. And then we have an S. The S represents, in the code, it's N-O-P-Q-R-S. It also represents a 6. So you have 6, 6, 6. Now let's look at the word Fargo. The word Fargo begins with an F. If you count on your fingers, F is the 6th letter, A, B, C, D, E, F. And then you have A-R. A is 1 and R is 5. For instance, N-O-P, Q-R. R is 5. 1 plus 5 is 6, and then you have a GO. G is a 7, and then remember I said that the O can sometimes represent a 6. So 7 plus 6 is 13. So Fargo would be F with 6, AR is 1 plus 5 or 6, and then the GO is 7 plus 6, and that's a 13, which also equals 6. So it's a 6, 6, 6. In this case, Wells Fargo is showing you a 6, 6, 6, 6, 6, 6, which comes to 36, which is the same as saying 3 6s. So behind me we have what's called the Nokia Plaza. I want to show you the word Nokia, which is Nokia. So what I like to do, I like to break things down into groups. When I look at the O and the K, in this case, O is not 6, O is actually 2, which is what it would be normally in the code, okay? And then the K is an 11, okay? So 2 plus 11 is 13. Now let's look, what do we have left? What are the letters that we have left? We have the N, what else do we have? We have the K, and we have the I, right? So let's look at that. When we look at the N and the A, and we have the I left, the I is a 9 in the code. The A is a 1, and the N is a 1. So we have A and N are 1 plus 1 is 2. 2 times 9 is 18. So the O and the K is a 2 and an 11, which is 13, and then the I, the A, and the N is 2 times 9 or 18, another 13, 18, which biblically means 666. Okay, what we have behind us is Starbucks. I want you to take a look at the Starbucks lettering first, and you notice it begins with ST. In the code, S is 6 and T is 7. So right now we have a 13, okay? Then the next two letters are A and R. A is 1 and R is 5. 1 plus 5 is 6. Now we have Bucks. Bucks is a little bit different, a little bit more complicated, but nevertheless, BU comes to, B is 2, U is 8. So 2 plus 8 is 10, and then the C is a 3. 10 plus 3 is 13. So now, what do we have left? We have a K. Now K can be 11, but it also can be 1 times 1 or 1 plus 1. In this case, it's going to be a 1 times 1, which is 1, and then we have an S. An S is a 6. So BUC is a 13, which is a 6. The K represents a 1, and the S represents a 6, which, so we have 6 plus 1 plus 6, which is 13. So we have Starbucks. ST is 13 or 6. AR is 6. 1 plus 5 is 6. And then the Bucks is a 13. Okay, so Starbucks is a 666. Now also I want you to look at the sign behind me, and that sign shows a woman. Okay, now biblically that woman represents either Isis or Lucifer, because Lucifer is known as the Queen of Heaven. That's another one of his names. Okay, and I want you to notice that it's in a circle. Okay, that's very important to understand. And also, I want you to notice that it has a 5-pointed star on its head. In the occult, the circle represents a 6, and the 5-pointed star represents a pentagram. Okay, the 5 and the 6 are very important. But remember what I said, every 6 is a 13. So you have 13 plus 5, which is 18, represents 666. There's also many other things you can study about that sign. That you will see a code. It's encoded into the Starbucks. Right now behind me we have what's called LA Live. You notice it is an angel ascending into heaven. In the Bible, in the Old Testament, Lucifer says he is going to ascend back into heaven. He was cast out of heaven. Okay, I want you to look at LA. LA in the code, L is 12, A is 1. So 12 plus 1 is 13. The word live is reverse. They use anagrams in the occult. It's reverse for evil, E-V-I-L. So it means he's going to ascend back into heaven. He's going to use witches to do it, and it's all evil. So that's what that represents. represents is Lucifer behind it. Now I want you to also look, it says AEG behind me, okay, with a 5-pointed star. AEG stands for Anschutz Entertainment Group. The A in the code is a 1, the E is a 5, so 1 plus 5 is 6, the G is a 7, so the 7 plus 6 is 13, and then with the 5-pointed star, it gives you 13 plus 5, which is 18, or 3 sixes is what it is. Now we also have, behind me, we have Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola has 1318 twice in its name. The first one is CO, and the CO stands for the C stands for 3, the O stands for 6, or 3 sixes, 18. And then Coca, the CA, is a reverse 1-3, and it stands for 13, so you have 1318. Now Cola is also CO, and that's an 18, and then the LA is 12 plus 1, which is 13. So it's 1318 twice, Coca-Cola. Okay, and then we have one more, we have Herbalife. You notice, is there a circle behind me? That circle with 3 points. The 3 points represent, the leaves represent 3, and then the circle represents a 6, which is 1318. Or 3 sixes. Herbalife has a circle with 3 leaves. The 3 leaves represent a number 3, and the circle represents a 6. That represents 3 sixes, or 666, which is 18, which is 666. So you understand the whole code revolves around 1318. And it's all marked with 6s, an abundance of 6s. You'll see 6s everywhere because that's their stamp, their signature. Notice behind me we have Regal 14. Now that's a movie theater, and the Regal Regal itself is in code. We have the RE and the G. The the R is a 5, the E is a 5. But remember, 5 is the 3rd prime number. So and E is the 3rd prime number. It's the number 5. So we have 3 and 3, which is 6. The G, which is 7. 6 plus 7 is 13. The next 2 letters are AL. A is 1, L is 12, and that's a 13, so that's another 6. And then we have another one which we haven't talked about yet, and that's the number 14. The number 14 is a reverse 41. 41 is the 13th prime number, so it's another 6. So there we have 6, 6, 6 in just the Regal 14. Now if you look above, you will see that it says it has a circle with 3 points. The 3 points represent 3, and the circle is a 6. So you have another 18, 3 sixes.
And Barnes & Noble is Harry Johnson, Diary of a Gigolo Porn Star. The crazy adventure of a 1951-born male in Beaufort, Georgia with a 2-foot penis that grows to 3 feet. He goes on to become an international porn star after becoming a war hero in Vietnam. Get it today at Amazon or Barnes & Noble.
Okay, here's State Farm in downtown Los Angeles. I recorded this while I was out there with Joe, but there's 3 circles. That looks like a 666. Alright, this is also in downtown Los Angeles. I mean, the Hilton's logo is questionable, and look at this architecture. I see serpents and dragons and snakes and the sun and things like that. Here's more architecture from downtown LA. I mean, what is this stuff and what does it mean? It just kind of boggles my mind, but if you look at it, I'm sure you'll see some hidden meanings. Alright, now this is the U.S. Bank building in downtown Los Angeles, 633 5th Street. So, 33, you've had a lot of news about 33 lately, with the 33rd degree Masons and Charlie Kirk. And now you got 66 right there, 5th Street. 6 times 3 is 18. Yeah, I mean, you could make a lot of numbers out of this, but what are the odds that a U.S. Bank, a huge building like that, their address is 633? All right, now look here at the Biltmore Hotel. Look at their logo. Tell me that doesn't, make you wonder
What the heck is going on with their logo? What is that? Is it an angel? That face kind of looks like the Statue of Liberty, but as you might have learned throughout this show, the Statue of Liberty is really Lucifer. Let's see, look at the architecture on this building here. And this is also downtown LA near Pershing Square. And you just got to wonder about what they're doing with this architecture and how long these buildings have been here and what the symbolism is. I mean, there's got to be a reason for them putting the things on there that they're putting on there. I just, I don't know. How old is this architecture for real? I mean, have you done any research on the mud floods and the possibility or probability that these buildings are a lot older than what we are being told, and that they were built long before Los Angeles was even here, during the pre-mud flood era, and that these aren't new buildings that were put up 50 or 100 years ago, that they might possibly have been here for hundreds of years and survived the mud floods, and now we're just layering new civilization on top of buried civilization all over the world, because there's a cycle of mud floods. And look, there's old number 7, Jack Daniels. So think about number 7 and what that really means right there.
Okay, welcome to the nightly edition of the Investigative Journal. I'm your host, Greg Szymanski, and my guest today was a member of the Illuminati, the Ordine Nero, they call it in Italian, the family, the order, for over 30 years. She left 10 years ago, has a story to tell that will put chills right through your body. This isn't the type of story that I normally do every day, and it's a story I did an earlier show with Vali, and I'll tell you something, it is one thing to talk about the Illuminati in general terms. It's one thing to, from afar, talk about George Bush and everyone else. It's another thing to go deeply into the Illuminati and to discuss certain things that Vali's going to talk about, which are very graphic, very horrific, and we're going to go into it because I want to impress upon you folks that these people exist, they're dangerous, and they are deeply rooted in our country. Now, 20 years ago, when I was covering stories, I'm a print journalist by trade, and I was working in Rome for 6 years. This was back in the early 80s, and I'll tell you firsthand, I learned from people there during a number of scandals that were going on that the heart of these problems is the Vatican. It all goes back to the Vatican, and I can say that without question. I met people there who told me about it. I met people who went through the same, one woman who went through the same induction ceremony as our guest tonight is going to tell you about. And I also talked about, back then, how they had talked to people who said they were deeply embedded in America. With that, I'm going to introduce my guest, and I might add, Svali's only granted this one interview today with me. She said she couldn't sleep last night. It was very difficult, and I really want to thank you, Svali, for coming on and sharing this, because I think it's going to help a lot of people, as my emails from this morning have showed. How are you tonight?
Oh, good. How are you, Greg?
Very good. I want to get right into this. You were born into the Illuminati, the family, the order. Tell us a little bit about your childhood and lead us into this induction ceremony in Rome, in the Vatican, when you were 12.
Okay. Well, I'm going to be brief because we don't have a lot of time, but I was born in a group, as both of my parents were in it, so it wasn't a question of being recruited at all. I mean, from my earliest days growing up, that's all I ever knew was being part of the group. My training began at a very early age. It continued throughout my childhood, and by the time I was 12, in the group, normally a person's considered an adult by the age of 12, and right at the point of between 12 and 13, they actually do a formal swearing in into your adult role within the group. And for me, part of this was going to Rome. My parents here prepared me for it, but then I went to Germany because I'm with the German house. I was born in Germany, came to the United States when I was young. But because I belonged to the German house in Europe, I went to the German father's house, and from there went with him and the French father to the Vatican, and during that time went through a ceremony. It's a very horrible ceremony. I mean, there's a room beneath the Vatican that a lot of people don't know about. You go below the basement level there, and I remember going down the stairs, and there's a room there, and it's a round room, and there's 13 catacombs that lead into the room, chambers, and they had taken a mummified figure from inside the catacombs and placed them beside each of the openings in the room, and they told me at the time that the spirits of the departed fathers were watched over the ceremony, because they really believe that their roots go back to Rome and even pre-Roman times. They then held a ceremony, and there was a gold pentagram on the floor, but above the pentagram there was a black stone table. And
stay close to your phone, Sally, okay?
Oh, yes. Okay. Well, there was above the pentagram there was a black stone table, and it was made of a shiny stone, and there were gold, like at the end there were like little, I know you call it like little channels to collect fluid on each corner, and they were made of gold. And during the ceremony they sacrificed a little boy, and after that, the man, he was dressed in scarlet robes, went to he moved to the center, actually to the side of the room, to the side of the table, and I had to go forward and kiss his ring, kneel before him and kiss his ring, and swear my undying loyalty to the world order.
Now, stay close to the phone. Who was with you now in this when you were going through this ceremony?
The French father, he represented the French house. The German father, he represented the German house. There were some other adults there too. Some were Catholic Church officials, and there were 2 other children as well who went through the ceremony.
And you said there were 3 adults?
There's more than 3 adults. There was probably about, I'd say 9 adults in the room with us, total.
Now, what did they say to you after? I mean, what was going through your mind when they were sacrificing this child? I mean, just tell us, can you remember back to what you were feeling?
Well, I was terrified. I mean, I was absolutely terrified. This is one of the most terrifying things a person can go through. So I remember just thinking, I can't wait till it's over. I can't wait till it's over. I can't wait to get through, It was like inside I kept, it's almost like you internally just talk to yourself or through it, like, I hope it's over soon, I hope it's over soon, I hope it's over soon.
Now, you're looking back now, why do you think what's the purpose of this?
I think it's to instill terror in people, because after the ceremony was over, the man conducting it said, may the same occur to you, or worse, should you ever break this oath. And at the time, I was so terrified that the thought of ever breaking that oath never even occurred to me, because I believed them. I mean, these people are not nice people, and when you go through something like that, it makes you very, not only does it instill quote-unquote loyalty, but instills a lot of terror.
Well, like I told you before, when 20 years ago, when I was approached by someone in Rome when I was covering these stories, and they told me a similar story when they were a child, and basically echoed what you're saying about what went on in their ceremony. This woman eventually committed suicide jumping off the Vatican roof.
Yeah.
And let me tell you something. After that, I began researching this story in depth, and found out some incredible things 25 years ago that are basically coming true now in this country. A couple minutes here before the break. Now, you left this order, you left this ceremony, you're 12 years old. Tell us who you left with and what happened afterwards then.
Well, I left with the German father, and afterwards he praised me. He said, "You did well," because I did everything I was supposed to do during the ceremony, and I didn't cry out or anything like that. And then we just went and we stayed at a local house. It was a wealthy person, and we stayed at the house, spent the night, and then we flew back to Germany the next day.
And did he tell you anything about how you did or what they expected of you?
No, before he had, but he just said you performed well, and he said this will help you rise in the family.
Okay, Zvali, just stay right there. We're going to get back. We're talking to Zvali, a member of the Illuminati for many, many years on the Genesis Communication Radio Network.